He has worked with me in the Ways and Means Committee against this type of abuse. How much time do you need, though? 2 minutes. I yield to the victorious gentleman from New Jersey. 2 minutes.
Gentleman from New Jersey is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Texas. I think that this is a very important amendment. We've talked about reining in tax cheats, and that's what we're talking about here. Given the relationship between offshore tax avoidance, and we've seen chapter and verse of how people avoid taxes, and I want everybody in this room to understand when they avoid taxes, that means those who pay taxes have to pay more to make up the difference. We're talking here about $1 billion to help tackle the nation's deficit and debt if we follow up on the specifics of this legislation. So we have tax avoidance. I don't think anybody supports tax avoidance unless you like being taxed more yourself. Tax evasion, the actual attempts to avoid paying specific taxes. In other words, you know what the law is. Evasion is a very conscious act, whether it's done by an individual or a business. And money laundering, we've heard that phrase, which is referred to many practices and activities. That's serious business, and as my brother from Staten Island remembers, the FBI looks into a lot of money laundering. You worked for the FBI and did a stellar job. Money laundering is critical. When money is laundered, average American gets hurt, and the specific connection is very, very ominous. This is a natural fit, Mr. Speaker, to combat financial crime. I think it is. One more minute or 2 more minutes?
I yield the gentleman an additional minute.
Thank you.
The gentleman is recognized for an additional minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Treasury could prohibit U.S. banks from accepting wire transfers or honoring credit cards from banks found to significantly hinder U.S. tax enforcement. We all support, I would hope, in this body, enforcing of the tax law. As much as we have derided the IRS and its efficiencies and proficiencies, think if we had less people in the IRS overseeing these transfers. I don't recommend that. I don't recommend that at all. This amendment will give the Treasury greater power to fight against offshore tax havens and tax cheats. And the counter-argument, my friend through the Speaker from New York, I want you to pay particular attention to this. This is my final point. Give me 30 seconds.
I yield the gentleman an additional 30 seconds.
The gentleman is recognized for 30 more seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You're going to say you're giving the government more power. Why are we so frightened to give oversight to government? This is what got us into a big jam in the last 20 years, when there was very little oversight over financial transactions. We need to have more power to the federal government to fight against offshore tax havens and tax cheats, because the bottom line is, if we don't, then more of the burden is placed upon us. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Texas reserves. Gentleman from New York is recognized.
I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
Thank you.
Gentlelady from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
I would hope that everyone would support this motion to instruct, because I think you probably know that nothing annoys American taxpayers more than the notion that offshore tax haven is a place for tax cheats to go so that they don't have to pay their taxes that normal Americans, everyday Americans, have to pay to the government. So this amendment will give the Treasury greater power to fight against offshore tax havens and tax cheats. It will allow the Treasury Department to take a range of measures against foreign governments and financial institutions that significantly stand in the way of U.S. tax enforcement. These special measures already exist for Treasury in combating money laundering by foreign governments and banks, money that could be used to finance terrorist activities, and now Treasury will have greater power to investigate offshore tax abusers and tax abuses and crack down on offenders and banks that aid them. For example, Treasury could prohibit U.S. banks from accepting wire transfers or honoring credit cards from banks found to significantly hinder U.S. tax enforcement. Treasury can impose conditions on foreign banks and prohibit them from opening or maintaining bank accounts within the United States that are significantly standing in the way of U.S. tax enforcement. Enacting this amendment makes our tax system fairer and helps reduce the deficit. This is a common-sense amendment that could raise nearly $1 billion to help tackle the nation's deficit and debt. The provision ends offshore tax abuses without raising any taxes, without creating any new obligations for any Americans, and without amending the tax code. We need to crack down on foreign governments and foreign banks that help privileged individuals and corporations dodge taxes, while the rest of Americans have to shoulder the extra tax burden. This amendment does that, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
Reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, how much time remains on each side?
Gentleman from Texas has 9.5 minutes, and the gentleman from New York has 27 minutes.
Does the gentleman from New York anticipate that he will have any speakers this afternoon?
Gentleman from Texas reserves. The gentleman from New York is recognized.
We have no more speakers. I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman reserves.
If the gentleman is
from
ready
Texas
to
is
close, I will use the balance of my time. I believe I have the right to close on the amendment.
The gentleman is correct.
All right.
The gentleman from New York is
I
recognized.
reserve the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To emphasize, all the speakers, my friend from New Jersey mentioned how money laundering is a very serious matter. Everyone here had a lot of passion. And there's no question tax evasion and the things we spoke about here today are of the utmost importance and are extremely serious. I agree. And that's why I stand today in opposition, because the committees of jurisdiction should be given the opportunity and the respect to hear these arguments and to look and make sure that everything is done procedurally correct. This is such a serious matter that I believe it warrants being in order. So, again, I want to emphasize that I'm not here to debate the merits. I'm simply here to say that we have two committees of jurisdiction, two very good committees, one of which I sit on, Financial Services Committee and Ways and Means. They should have the opportunity to do their jobs. And I think that's what the American people and our constituents demand of us. And I believe that in this case, because it is so serious and because it involves very serious amounts of money, money laundering, tax evasion, and so on, that regular order should be demanded. So with that, again, I'd like to urge my colleagues to vote no on this motion to instruct and strict with the process of regular order and give the committees of jurisdiction the proper respect that they deserve so that this can have the full hearings necessary and all can take place in debate. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, throughout this debate, there's only one thing that both sides agree on, and that is that this transportation bill ought to move forward and move forward expeditiously. This transportation bill has not moved forward expeditiously because of obstruction here in the House. It should have become law long ago, months ago, perhaps years ago. so that we could deal with the infrastructure problems in this country and deal with the jobs that could be created by doing the hard work of building things that we need in order to strengthen our economy and improve job growth in the private sector. That's where the agreement begins and that's where the agreement ends. Because the basic position of the gentleman in coming to oppose this is to give no argument on the merits as to why this provision that the Senate has already adopted with Republican and Democratic support combined, why it should not become law. Let me tell you a little of the perspective I bring to this. About 10 days ago, I went one business to another across San Antonio. I was at a tire shop. They put on wheels, tires, rims on cars and pickups. It is hot, dirty work. They struggle to make a living. They work long hours. They work odd hours. They're not air conditioned. They're out there, they got to deal with local regulations, government at all levels, pay their taxes, meet their payroll, take care of their sick workers. I was down the street from there at a tamale factory, a woman who had a great idea and expanded it so that she's selling tamales all over America. And they're great. It was a good way to begin the day to eat some of her tamales. Those folks are working hard to make a living. And they're like some of the folks with Startup America, the small tech companies that I have represented in Austin and now increasingly in San Antonio that have an idea. One group I talked to, their office was at a local coffee shop until they got run out. They sat there with their computers, they came up with an idea, and now they have dozens of employees in a new startup. Why is it that those kind of businesses, whether it's putting on tire rims on a pickup truck or a startup tech company, ought to have to pay a higher rate of taxes than some company that can afford to link up with a foreign bank and a big CPA firm and hide their revenues in a bank in Switzerland or in Panama or in the Cayman Islands? It cries out that this Congress would correct that injustice. And the fact that that injustice is not being corrected by this Congress, it tells all the problems that we have here in Washington if you just watch the last hour of debate. Because you have people that linger around this Capitol, whispering in the corridors, hiding in the shadows, coming out only at campaign time when now under the campaign rules they can pour unlimited amounts of secret corporate money into their favorite candidate. And they decide that we haven't had enough process on this issue. Well, let me tell you, it took 10 years to get a small provision added through the Ways and Means Committee to simply say you can't go out and do a transaction simply for the purpose of dodging taxes. It has to have some economic substance. 10 years in which people avoided paying their fair share. You know, my little company down there in San Antonio that changes tires all day, they've probably never been to Switzerland, much less considered hiring a bank in Switzerland to help them hide their revenues that they work so hard to earn that one of these companies involved in these abusive transactions has found to be rather routine. And you say, well, this is just academic. Surely people can't get away with this stuff. Let me tell you what they're getting away with. I pointed out that with regard to one bank in Switzerland, UBS, they finally had to disclose $18 billion, that's billion with a B, $18 billion of assets of United States citizens sitting there in hidden accounts in that bank. There were some 50,000 such accounts that UBS had to disclose, and eventually they had to pay over $700 million in fines. But they're not the only bank that is involved. Currently, the Treasury has under investigation 11 Swiss banks. There's one bank that is under federal indictment. This is not an academic problem. It's academic only to those who talk about process instead of solutions. We have a serious problem that undermines the confidence in our government and in our system of tax collection. Why should somebody who's out there struggling at that tire rim company or that tech startup or just a working family that's out there trying to make ends meet with two people, some working overtime, some working the night shift in order to provide the food and fiber that their family needs to survive? Why should they comply with our tax laws when you have these kind of companies that can afford the special treatment, that can afford the lobbyists to block measures like this? So today I would say to you that there is an opportunity for this House to make itself clear on this issue. Yes, we want to move a transportation bill. And while Republicans have told us we can have transportation without really paying for it, we have a measure adopted on a bipartisan basis that will provide us $1 billion more of the transportation we need. But we not only get that additional transportation, but we have an opportunity today to make our views well known to all of the public, to all of the people of America. Do you stand on the side of preventing abuse? Do you stand on the side of equity and fairness to all American taxpayers? Or do you want special treatment? Do you want the few the privilege to continue to enjoy the privilege and of conniving, of the connivance that goes on between some of these folks and their lobbyists and their accountants and their high-powered lawyers and lobbyists to get advantages that most Americans don't want? As far as I'm concerned, almost no matter what the topic is on this floor of this House, that's the basic issue involved, is whether there will be equity and fairness that gives Americans confidence in this system of government, in this democracy, or whether it again and again will be subverted, and in this case, with one member coming to offer an objection to the motion, not because the matter doesn't have merit, but because it hadn't been studied enough. We have studied this problem to death. It requires out for an answer today, and this motion is a narrow way of answering it. It won't solve all the problems. There'll still be ways that these special interests will find to dodge and avoid their fair share of the taxes, but it will close one abuse. It will give our law enforcement authorities one more tool to deal with criminal tax evasion, and I believe we ought to adopt that very narrow measure and write it into the laws of the United States. Send this bill that has been lingering for so long to the President to be signed, and include in it the fact that this Congress did at least one little thing to address the inequities, the special privileges and advantages that the few enjoy here in Washington. Say no to that and yes to prompt action on this transportation bill, and include that bill at $1 billion of additional transportation revenues. I urge my colleagues to adopt this motion, to instruct, and to do it promptly today, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. All time for debate has expired. Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the
I demand the yeas and nays.
opinion of the Chair, the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, on that I request the yeas and nays.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, on that I request the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Pursuant to House Resolution 667 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House and the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 5325. Will the gentleman from New York, Mr. Grimm, kindly take the chair? Okay.
The Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 5325, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill making appropriations for energy and water development and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2013, and for other purposes.
When the Committee of the Whole rose earlier today, the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, had been disposed of, and the bill had been read through page 56, line 24. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, proceedings will now resume on those amendments on which further proceedings were postponed in the following order. An amendment by Mr. Fortenberry of Nebraska. An amendment by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas. An amendment by Mr. Connolly of Virginia. An amendment by Mr. Kucinich of Ohio. An amendment number 9 by Mr. Burgess of Texas. An amendment by Mr. Reed of New York. An amendment by Ms. Loretta Sanchez of California. An amendment by Mr. Polis of Colorado. An amendment by Mr. Lugin of New Mexico. An amendment by Mr. Chabot of Ohio. An amendment by Mrs. Blackburn of Tennessee. An amendment by Mr. Mulvaney of South Carolina. An amendment by Mr. Flake of Arizona. An amendment by Mr. King of Iowa. And an amendment by Mrs. Lummis of Wyoming. The Chair will reduce to 2 minutes the time of any electronic vote after the first vote in this series. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Fortenberry, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Fortenberry of Nebraska.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic device. This will be a 15-minute vote.
Well, the House has taken up a number of issues today. One, the energy and water spending bill for fiscal year 2013, and they are wrapping up amendment work here with a series of, it looks like, about 15 amendment votes on the floor. They've also debated, general debate this afternoon, the spending bill for Homeland Security, and as you may have just seen, a couple of motions to instruct the conferees on the transportation bill. First up, though, this series of amendment votes, starting with an amendment proposed by Jeff Fortenberry, a Republican of Nebraska. And this is a 15-minute vote. It is likely that all of the following amendment votes, and 15 amendment votes, and all of the following amendment votes after this one will be 2-minute votes. We'll also have ahead the final passage vote on the energy and water spending bill. Number of congressional committees meeting today as well, and the Comptroller of the Treasury appearing, of the currency rather, appearing on Capitol Hill earlier today in a hearing looking at the J.P. Morgan loss, the at least $2 billion trading loss. Thomas Curry said that the loss was due to inadequate risk management within the bank's chief investment office. We're going to show you that portion of the hearing as this 15-minute vote continues.
Mr. Curry, it is clear from your testimony that J.P. Morgan lacked the proper control to mitigate such a large loss. Was this a failure in risk management? If so, what should the bank have done differently?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In essence, we believe that the issue at J.P. Morgan Chase is one of inadequate risk management within the Office of the Chief Investment Office. We have been focusing on potential gaps or deviations from accepted standards of risk management within that particular office and looking to see whether similar gaps exist in any other area of J.P. Morgan's risk management architecture.
Mr. Curry, the OCC has dozens and dozens of examiners at J.P. Morgan. First, did your agency check the risk management and internal controls of all aspects of the bank, including the Chief Investment Office, before this event? Or did you miss this? And second, while regulators are not in the position to review every single trade, what assurances can you give us that the bank regulators will be able to monitor situations where large trades, whether done for hedging or other purposes, could bring down a firm or have a systemic impact on the broader economy?
One of the major focuses of our examination and supervision activities is risk management. We look at risk management in the entire organization and within key areas where there's a substantial risk facing the institution. That process is intended to go across the entire organization in those key areas. In this particular case, we are looking at whether there were gaps within our assessment of the risks and the risk controls in place in the CIO office. We are in the process of evaluating that on our ongoing examination. The point I would make in terms of our focus on risk management is that it is one part of the overall approach to identifying risks within the organization. As Governor Tarullo mentioned, a key component of how we assess and mitigate risks in the institutions is the institution's capital levels, their level of reserves, and their liquidity. In the case of J.P. Morgan Chase, both their capital levels and liquidity are substantially higher than they were at the beginning of the financial crisis. And as I mentioned in both my oral and written comments, they are more than sufficient to withstand the reported losses in this particular area. We are continuing to review as part of one of the two prongs of our ongoing review is what exactly transpired with the trading operation within the CIO's office. And we are looking to make sure that there were appropriate limits and controls on those activities in that area and how they compared to other similar areas within the organization.
It is important that Wall Street reform implementation is completed to enhance financial stability and reduce systemic risk. Secretary Whelan, just to be clear, it does not seem to be that the J.P. Morgan trading loss was systemic. Do you agree? And what do you believe are the implications of the recent losses at J.P. Morgan on the Wall Street reform rulemakings that have yet to be completed?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that question. Obviously, the loss at J.P. Morgan Chase was a big loss and one that, as Mr. Curry suggested, will affect shareholders. But we concur in his judgment that it is not about the solvency of the firm or, for that matter, the stability of the broader financial system. I think what's clear is that the lessons that we all learn from what happened at J.P. Morgan Chase will serve as important lessons, insights into the range of Dodd-Frank implementation work to come, whether it's the Volcker Rule or questions about risk management or enhanced prudential standards or, for that matter, capital. And I think this incident underscores the need for us to pay attention to examples like this in order to learn those lessons, both with respect to Dodd-Frank implementation and, as I suggested earlier, the broader efforts of supervision that are ongoing.
Secretary Whelan, are regulators better coordinated and prepared after Wall Street reform to deal with external threats to our financial stability and economic growth like the Eurozone crisis? What steps are you taking in response to this crisis?
I think there's no question, Mr. Chairman, that the existence of the Financial Stability Oversight Council has given Treasury and the various banking and market regulators of the U.S. government an opportunity to constantly monitor financial markets and the exposures of our banks and our broader financial system to what is going on in Europe. The Financial Stability Oversight Council has spent a lot of time on Europe and thinking through what its implications are and might be to our financial system. That work, of course, is ongoing. But I think for the first time, this council really gives the range of relevant entities of the U.S. government the capacity to share perspectives, to work together in engaging counterparts in Europe to make sure that we are as well prepared and have thought through the various contingencies that might be necessary.
Governor Tarullo, do you have anything to add to this?
Mr. Chairman, with respect to European preparation, I'd just say that one thing about the Eurozone problems is they've been with us for some time, as a result of which we have been able to regularize a system of oversight of U.S. financial institution exposures and activities in Europe. So right after the first Greek problems arose in May of 2010, on an ad hoc basis, we began looking at these. Over time, what we've been able to do is put in place a system that allows us to check the positions and exposures of individual firms against aggregated data, whether from market sources or from supervisory sources, just to make sure that both we and the firms have a handle on what is going on. Other than that, I'd concur with what Secretary Wolin said.
Senator Shelby.
Thank you. I think it's kind of a given here from what I read and what I know, the stress test J.P. Morgan went through and so forth, that they have more than adequate capital. I've been told that they would have to sustain losses 40 times, in other words, $70, $80 billion to even, and they'd still be standing. Is that about right, Governor Torello?
Senator, in the stress test, what we did with the trading book was to assume an instantaneous shock based on our very adverse scenario, which entailed trading losses of $28 billion. We also assumed over the period of the stress test credit losses of $56 billion. The sum of those gives approximately the number you indicated.
Comptroller Curry, tell us, just walk us through, from what you know, what was going on at J.P. Morgan. You know, were they managing risk? Were they making money? Were they doing a combination of what? Everybody's got to measure risk, but in other words, what was really going on? You had people on site, right?
That's correct.
So they took a position. Was that a position to manage something they'd already done, or could you explain it to us? I know it's complicated.
No, that's actually the key question that we're trying to address, Senator, is what actually happened in this particular investment strategy. It's a very complicated investment strategy, both in terms of its size as well as complexity. We are looking to determine what the actual strategy behind that investment scheme was, and also if there were any other factors that were driving that strategy other than attempting to mitigate known risks in the bank's portfolio.
But whether it's the banking arena or some other arena, but especially in the area of derivatives and so forth, you take a position, somebody else has another position, right?
Yes.
So if you win, you're looking great, you're looking smart. If you lose, you're maybe not having a bad day. But you're not trying to take risk out of the market, are you?
Not necessarily.
But what are you really trying to do? From my perspective, I think banks ought to be able to take risk. They ought to manage those risks. The regulators ought to make sure that they know what's going on from your perspective and the Fed's perspective of any huge risk they take, that it might, endanger the taxpayer. A lot of us, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us are worried about the taxpayer and bailouts and future bailouts. J.P. Morgan, as strong as they are, seems from your testimony and others, and what we know, was never in any danger if they lost $2 billion or $4 billion or what. That's a lot of money to me, and I guess it's a lot of money to them. But what did the comptroller's office know, and were you on top of things? How many people did you have at J.P. Morgan kind of supervising or watching this?
Let me address the issue of the supervisory strategy with respect to risk management first, Senator. Number one, we're looking for the institution to identify and address the potential for serious risk within the organization. We're really not looking to eliminate all risk. If you did so, you wouldn't have a bank. I mean, the nature of a bank is to manage risk and to be profitable. The role of capital is really to absorb those areas where risk is either unavoidable or occurs just because of the nature of the business. And in the case of J.P. Morgan's National Bank, which we supervise, there is ample capital. There's over $101 billion worth of capital backing just the national bank, not the holding company. With respect to the actual supervision of J.P. Morgan Chase, we have 65 individuals who are our core team of examiners who are resident at the institution. On top of that, we are able to draw upon a considerable reservoir of skilled individuals with expertise in a variety of credit, capital markets, and other areas that are brought in as a targeted exams or an as-needed basis. We also work in connection and cooperation with the Federal Reserve system, which also supervises the holding company. In terms of this particular investment situation at the CIO's office, we did begin to examine this early in April. Our interest and concern intensified during the month as losses increased within the portfolio up to the point that the institution itself announced the significance of the losses that were incurred. Since that point in time, our focus has been on managing and monitoring the bank's efforts to mitigate or de-risk that particular portfolio with the objective of ensuring that there's a soft landing and of that particular position, and to minimize both risk to the institution and ultimately to the deposit insurance fund.
When do you think you will finish your analysis of what really happened and all this?
We hope to do that as quickly as possible, and we also hope to use our findings to inform us as to what potential implications there are for the other institutions that we supervise in our large bank cadre of institutions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Reid.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Curry, you have 65 personnel devoted to supervision. How many are in London?
We have 5 individuals who reside or are housed in our London office.
And they're responsible for how many institutions in London?
They're responsible for any national bank that has a global operation, especially with the presence in London, like a London branch office.
So how many would that be, roughly?
That would be, I would give you the exact number, but it would be roughly a half dozen institutions.
Half dozen. How common is it to have the risk office of the National Bank located outside of the United States?
In this particular case, the risk office is actually housed in New York, where the global operations of the CIO office are housed. So from a supervisory standpoint, our focus in supervising that and other global issues is really directed from our resident team in New York.
One of the impressions you get from reading the press, though, is the CIO office in London actually had significant responsibility with respect to the overall risk of the bank. In fact, the justification that has publicly been made is that they were taking these hedge positions, taking these investment positions to protect the bank from the overall portfolio of the bank, which is essential a risk operation. Can you explain it?
No, the individuals that are responsible for managing the risk and establishing the parameters for the activities that may occur in the London office are housed in New York, and that is where the physical focus of our activity has been.
And they reported directly to the chief management, or?
The chief executive officer,
right.
Yes.
And you're confident from your review that they had complete authority to countermand or contradict or direct the operations in London?
That is part of the focus. One of the focuses of our review is to determine the accountability, the involvement of management in supervising the design of the risk management controls and their monitoring of it.
When the model for risk was changed, were you aware of that change? Did you evaluate the new model? It took place prior to your assuming these duties. I understand that. You came on board about April 9th, and April 6th was the first indication of difficulty. So, but was that, I think the VAR is the term, model evaluated by OCC?
Right. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of models that are employed by large financial institutions to measure and monitor a variety of risks or other functions in the institution. Under the authority of the applicable capital regulations, Basel regulations, we are required to approve their capital-related models. There are other models that may be at issue here, management-related models or other models that would have been involved in this particular situation. We would not have had an express approval requirement of those models, but we would likely have been aware of them, and we're looking at our procedures for evaluating other types of models that are used by an institution such as J.P. Morgan Chase. I would point out that a year ago, last April, the OCC did publish written formal guidance on the use of models by OCC-supervised institutions. And that guidance does outline the pitfalls and areas in which banks and bank management must assess in the use of models in measuring risk throughout their organization.
Mr. Wallen, right now we face a serious challenge in Europe with European banks who seem to be in a much more adverse condition than the United States banking industry based on capital and many other measures, as Governor Trule's testimony. To what extent has Dodd-Frank improved our banking situation vis-a-vis the Europeans and put us in a better, stronger position?
Senator, I think that both Dodd-Frank and the ability of the Financial Stability Oversight Council to come together and discuss and understand these things, but also the work of the Fed and other regulators sitting at this table to undergo the stress tests that have been at the core of making sure that our banking system is well capitalized and well cushioned from the kinds of exposures it might have otherwise have been important aspects of our being in a much better position than we were before Dodd-Frank, and frankly in a much better position than our counterparts in Europe.
Is that your view, Governor Trule?
Yes, Senator. I think that beginning in 2008 and with the hearings that were conducted by this committee and your counterparts in the House in 2009 on reform, there was just a sea change in attitudes and orientation, both with respect to existing authorities and with the use of new authorities. And as Secretary Wolin indicated, particularly with respect to stress testing, capital requirements, which of course are embedded now in Section 165 of Dodd-Frank, I think we just all have a much better handle on the positions that our banks will be in the case of a tail event, which is to say the very bad, if low probability outcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That is part of the Senate Banking Committee hearing from earlier today looking at the J.P. Morgan loss. You can see all of that in our video library at cspan.org. and we'll have it later in our program schedule as well. And just to note that a week from today, the Banking Committee will hear from the CEO of J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon, and we will have live coverage for you on the C-SPAN networks. The House here is in the first of 15 amendment votes, a series of a total about 19 votes on the House floor. This is an amendment to the 2013 spending bill for the Energy Department and federal water projects. This first vote, 15 minutes, by Jeff Fortenberry of Nebraska, an amendment that would shift $17 million within the Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation Account, and the intent of the amendment is to increase the funding for the Global Threat Reduction Initiative. All of the remaining amendment votes will be 2-minute votes.
The nays are 89, and the amendment is adopted. Members are advised that remaining votes in this vote series will be 2-minute votes. 2-minute votes. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Second amendment offered by Ms. Jackson Lee of Texas.
A recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 2-minute vote.
Well, as you can tell, the House will quickly make work of 14 amendment votes here to the 2013 Energy and Water Spending Bill. What we expect to happen after that is a Democratic motion to recommit and a vote on final passage and a couple of votes on motions to instruct conferees on the highway bill. This is an amendment by Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas, which would increase funding for energy efficiency and renewable energy research construction projects by $10 million.
Is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, on which further proceedings were postponed and in which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Connolly of Virginia.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. A 2-minute vote.
Jerry Connolly's amendment to the 2013 spending bill for energy and water would reduce funds in the bill for oil shale development by $25 million and apply the savings to the spending reduction account.
The amendment is not adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the noes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Kucinich of Ohio.
Recorded vote has been requested. Those in support of the request for a recorded vote will rise and be counted. Sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. A 2-minute vote.
Tom Price of Georgia, the acting chair, moving the House through a series of amendment votes here. This one by Dennis Kucinich and Tom McClintock of California, an amendment that would prohibit the use of funds in the bill for new loan guarantees for fossil fuel demonstration projects. Again, these are all amendments debated earlier to the 2013 spending bill for the Energy Department and federal water projects.
adopted. The unfinished business is the request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 9, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Burgess, on which further proceedings were postponed and on which the ayes prevailed by voice vote. The clerk will redesignate the amendment.
Amendment Number 9, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Burgess of Texas.
For the request for a recorded vote will rise and